Snow White, a fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm. It was the middle of winter, and the snowflakes were falling like feathers from the sky. And a queen sat at her window, working, and her embroidery frame was of ebony. And as she worked, gazing at times out on the snow, she pricked her finger, and there fell from it 3 drops of blood on the snow. And when she saw how bright and red it looked, she said to herself, "Oh, that I had a child as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as the wood of the embroidery frame." Not very long after, she had a daughter, with a skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony. And she was named Snow White. And when she was born, the queen died. After a year had gone by, the king took another wife, a beautiful woman, but proud and overbearing, and she could not bear to be surpassed in beauty by anyone. She had a magic looking-glass, and she used to stand before it and look in it and say, "Looking-glass upon the wall, who is fairest of us all?" And the looking-glass would answer, "You are fairest of them all." And she was contented, for she knew that the looking-glass spoke the truth. Now Snow White was growing prettier and prettier, and when she was 7 years old, she was as beautiful as day, far more so than the queen herself. So one day, when the queen went to her mirror and said, "Looking-glass upon the wall, who is fairest of us all?" it answered, "Queen, you are full fair, 'tis true, but Snow White fairer is than you." This gave the queen a great shock, and she became yellow and green with envy, and from that hour her heart turned against Snow White, and she hated her. And envy and pride like ill weeds grew in her heart higher every day, until she had no peace day or night. At last she sent for a huntsman and said, "Take the child out into the woods, so that I may set eyes on her no more. You must put her to death, and bring me her heart for a token." The huntsman consented, and led her away, but when he drew his cutlass to pierce Snow White's innocent heart, she began to weep and to say, "Oh, dear huntsman, do not take my life. I will go away into the wildwood and never come home again." And as she was so lovely, the huntsman had pity on her and said, "Away with you then, poor child." For he thought the wild animals would be sure to devour her, and it was as if a stone had been rolled away from his heart when he spared to put her to death. Just at that moment, a young wild boar came running by, so he caught and killed it, and taking out its heart, he brought it to the queen for a token. And it was salted and cooked, and the wicked woman ate it up, thinking that there was an end of Snow White. Now, when the poor child found herself quite alone in the wild woods, she felt full of terror, even of the very leaves on the trees, and she did not know what to do for fright. Then she began to run over the sharp stones and through the thorn bushes, and the wild beasts after her, but they did her no harm. She ran as long as her feet would carry her, and when the evening drew near, she came to a little house, and she went inside to rest. Everything there was very small, but as pretty and clean as possible. There stood the little table ready laid and covered with a white cloth, and 7 little plates, and 7 knives and forks and drinking cups. By the wall stood 7 little beds, side by side, covered with clean white quilts. Snow White, being very hungry and thirsty, ate from each plate a little porridge and bread, and drank out of each little cup a drop of wine, so as not to finish up one portion alone. After that, she felt so tired that she lay down on one of the beds, but it did not seem to suit her. One was too long, another too short, but at last the 7th was quite right, and so she lay down upon it, committed herself to heaven, and fell asleep. When it was quite dark, the masters of the house came home. They were 7 dwarfs, whose occupation was to dig underground among the mountains. When they had lighted their 7 candles, and it was quite light in the little house, they saw that someone must have been in, as everything was not in the same order in which they left it. Each of them noticed something had been used. Then the 7th looked at his bed and saw little Snow White lying there asleep. They cried, "What beautiful child is this?" In the morning, when Snow White awoke and saw the 7 dwarfs, she was frightened, but they were friendly and asked her name and story. When she told them all, they said, "If you will keep our house and cook and sew and clean, you may stay, and you shall lack nothing." Snow White agreed and stayed with them. The dwarfs went to the mountains to dig for gold and warned her, "Beware of your stepmother. Let no one in." But the queen, thinking Snow White dead, stood before her mirror and asked, "Looking glass upon the wall, who is fairest of us all?" The mirror replied, "Queen, you art of beauty rare, but Snow White, living in the glen with the 7 little men, is 1,000 times more fair." The queen disguised herself as an old peddler woman and went across the mountains. She sold Snow White a lace and laced her tightly until she fainted. When the dwarfs returned and found her, they cut the lace and she revived. The queen tried again with a poisoned comb. Snow White let her in again, and the comb caused her to faint once more. But the dwarfs saved her again. When the queen saw her plans had failed, she made a poisonous apple, beautiful on the outside, but deadly inside. Disguised again, she went to the dwarf's house and offered the apple to Snow White. She cut it in 2, gave Snow White the red half, and ate the white herself. Snow White took a bite and fell down dead. The queen believed herself finally victorious and returned to her mirror. This time it answered, "You are the fairest now of all." The dwarfs found Snow White lifeless and could not revive her, but she still looked alive, so they placed her in a glass coffin on the mountain and mourned. One day a prince passed by and saw her. He begged to take the coffin. As his servants carried it, they stumbled, dislodging the piece of poisoned apple. Snow White awoke. The prince asked her to come with him and be his bride, and she agreed. A grand wedding was held. The stepmother, upon consulting her mirror, heard, "O queen, although you are of beauty rare, the young bride is 1,000 times more fair."
Enraged, she went to the wedding to see that the bride was Snow White. As punishment, red-hot iron shoes were put on her feet, and she had to dance until she fell down dead.